Hello and welcome to Newsmax TV. I'm John Bachman, and joining us now on the phone is a former ambassador, Otto Reich. He served as a senior official to Presidents Reagan, Bush 41, as well as Bush 43. He's also served as the Assistant Secretary of State for the Western Hemisphere and as well as the ambassador to Venezuela. He's also a member of the Lignet.com advisory board. And as always, it's great having you back with us, Ambassador.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Okay, let's talk about the situation in Venezuela. As most people know, President Hugo Chavez has a lung infection. There are reports that he could be very close to death. He's in Cuba at the time being. And so there are two men basically left in his stead. Maduro Cabello, he was the National Assembly president, and Nicolas Maduro, who is the vice president of Venezuela. The controversy is here because Chavez needs to be in Venezuela to be sworn in for his next term as presidency. But what happens, Ambassador Wright, if he is not able to return to Venezuela to be sworn in?
Well, what should happen, according to Venezuelan constitutional lawyers, if Chavez is not in Venezuela by Thursday, which is the 10th, to be sworn in, is that he cannot be sworn in. However, since Venezuela is no longer a constitutional democracy, what the ruling party is trying to do is simply violate the Constitution by either sending a delegation from the Supreme Court to Havana to allegedly swear Chavez in his hospital room, where he is either dead or dying, or perhaps enjoying very good health. Nobody knows. It's unlikely he's enjoying good health, but where he is in Cuba, and swear him in there. Or alternatively, another faction of the government is saying that Chavez does not have to be sworn in because he's already the president. So he'll just continue being the president. Either way, it's a violation of the Constitution, and it's indicative of the lack of respect that the Chavez government has had for the people and the laws of Venezuela ever since it came to power 14 years ago.
And that leaves Maduro and Cabello there basically to run the country. Do we know enough about these two guys to know which direction? They're both similar to Chavez politically. Do you think they'll take the country in any different direction, or will things continue status quo?
That's a good question, and I think the answer is sort of like they are a distinction without a difference. Maduro is not a very charismatic leader, neither is Cabello. Maduro is the current vice president. He came up through the ranks of the labor movement. He was a head of a labor union, the bus drivers union in Caracas. He is far left, like they all are. But ominously, he appears to be the selected candidate or choice of Fidel and Raul Castro in Cuba. The Castro brothers, and I know this is going to be hard for Americans to believe, the Castro brothers have been running Venezuela through Hugo Chavez for the last several years. They make all the important decisions. Chavez is basically just really a puppet. He talks and talks, but the main decisions are made by the Castros in Havana. There are 60,000 Cubans inside Venezuela running all the strategic communications, the intelligence networks, involved in the military, down to the platoon level. And so Maduro is the candidate of the continuation of the Cuban control of Venezuela. Cabello is also a leftist. He participated in the anti-constitutional coup of 1992 with Hugo Chavez, the one that brought Chavez to international attention. That was a failure at the time, but that gave him the prominence that led to his being elected president several years later.
What about the opposition?
Cabello is said to be a nationalist. Say again?
What about the opposition, the Justice First Party in Venezuela? Are they in any position to be strong enough to make inroads here with the uncertainty of the future?
Well, just to conclude, Cabello is a nationalist, a leftist nationalist. Maduro is a leftist pro-Cuban. Whichever one comes to power in Venezuela is not going to be good for the United States. Now, going back to this latest question, about the opposition. Unfortunately, the opposition in Venezuela is not very strong. They're not well financed. They have lost several elections, but there's a lot of questions about whether those elections were legitimate or not. Chavez always at the last minute has this magic surge in votes, and he ends up winning. But either, whether or not the opposition has been able to garner enough votes to win, the fact is that the rules of the elections have been unfair. There have not been fair elections in Venezuela since Chavez came to power.
And you talked about how no matter what happens here, essentially, it's not going to be good for the United States. I want to talk about a couple other factors here. It looks like Argentinian President Cristina Fernandez is going to travel to Cuba to try and meet with Chavez or whoever is representing Chavez in Cuba. Brazil's government reportedly has said there seems to be nothing violating the Venezuelan constitution, however dubious of a document that might be. So this is bad for the United States in this hemisphere. Is it? From what we're seeing from these other countries, is South America essentially lost at this point to the United States, and having the United States have any ability to gain any traction and favorability in South America?
Well, I mean, Latin America is not lost because, it never belonged to us. It may be lost to democracy.
That was maybe more my question. Is it lost to democracy?
The U.S. Certainly does not have the influence that we've had in the past. And the reason we've had influence in the past is because we're dealing primarily with democratic governments. I'm talking about the last 25 years.
Would you say it's at an all-time low, the U.S. influence in South America?
It is certainly very, very low, yes. I'd say that U.S. influence is at an all-time low, but it's also because the U.S. is not utilizing its influence. The influence, the potential influence is there, but the Obama administration has elected not to use it. Certainly not use it in the interest of the United States strategic betterment in the region. I mean, for example, we have reached out the United States, under the Obama administration, have reached out to all these leftists who have slapped our hand away, and we have ignored the democratic governments in the region, like Colombia, like Chile, like Peru. I mean, we had very few initiatives of any significance with those countries. But at the same time, we have told all these leftist governments that, yes, we can work with them and it's okay, without recognizing that these are not left-of-center governments, like some of the European socialists, for example. These are Marxist governments. These are governments that the leaders, having come to power, begin to dismantle the democratic institutions, beginning with the electoral process, then the judiciary, then the freedom of the press. They try to control all of the civil institutions like labor unions and others, and even undermine the business community. And pretty soon they end up, for example, like Morales in Bolivia, or Correa in Ecuador, or Ortega in Nicaragua, with complete control of the country.
All right, we'll leave it there for now. As always, it's been a pleasure talking with you. Ambassador Otto Reich, thanks for being with us.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.